right, we're on tape now. I think I'm just gonna start because we have a lot of back to end and like a lot of cool sessions in this upcoming language track for the next 2 hours. And I don't want to take away any time from anyone else. So thank you all for being here. Welcome to that to the session of digital language equality for all languages in Europe. This is my second WikidataCon session ever. I just had my first, which was very exciting. And I'm happy to be here, and let's dive in. So when I talk about me, my name is Maria. I've been working with Wikimedia Deutschland for the past couple of years. I'm going to have my 5-year anniversary in 2 weeks, also very exciting. I've been mainly involved with the volunteer support team for the past couple of years. Some of the things like doing some volunteer projects together with volunteers in Germany, supporting local hubs in Germany, all kinds of different stuff. And more recently, I've been more involved with projects around Wikidata and Wikibase, the kind of projects that have like partners, external partners, some contracts maybe involved, some project plans. And that's what I've been doing. And that's also why I'm here talking to you at the moment. This session is about trying to get a little bit input on a project that we've been part of. I've prepared an Etherpad for this, but I'm also, yes, exactly like Susanna is writing in the chat. I'm happy to take questions and comments anywhere where you leave them. Open your mic and talk to me. That would be lovely. Or leave your comments in this chat, leave your comments in the Etherpad. I'm going to go through some input now and then have the discussion at the end. The starting point of the project that I'm going to talk about, again, it's called European language equality, and it's about digital language equality for languages in Europe. The starting point for all of this is that the EU has 24 official languages next to more than 60 regional and minority languages, plus migrant languages, sign languages. And yet, as we all know, I think that digital support, language technologies, resources, all this kind of stuff is mainly focused on English. Then not so much. And then in Europe, German, French, Spanish, and Italian, which does not show the big diversity that we have in language communities in Europe. So the challenge that this project tries to tackle or seize is how we can enable all those languages except English, or like besides the major or like the big languages, to realize their full potential, to have like a sustainable life in the digital sphere, to be represented in the internet, online, for language communities to be able to consume content in their languages. How can we do that? The project is trying this one way. There are probably a lot of other ways to do this, but one way the project is trying to do this is to write down a plan, what needs to happen, and with this plan to go to the European Commission and tell them this and this and this needs to happen, otherwise you will have European languages that are going to be extinct in on the internet and like in the digital sphere. So there are 53 organizations all throughout Europe working on this, which is quite an effort of coordination and communication. But there are universities, there are language institutes, there are representatives of language communities, there are industry players or industry stakeholders involved in this that are working on language technologies themselves, and there are also kind of networks and communities like ours involved in this. And we're all trying to come up with that plan and with that agenda on how we actually can achieve something like full digital equality, with a focus on those under-resourced languages. We have been asked to be part of this. I mean, I think we all know how languages is a crucial and like a very base feature of our movement. So the project leaders wanted us, the movement, editors of small language Wikipedias, editors of Wikidata, editors of European language Wikipedias, to kind of give their input on what it needs for the EU and what they need to do to make a change on like the big level for those languages. The big goal of this is to have a workshop with members of the European Parliament by the end of next summer, which is going to be scheduled in the next week, and to present this agenda and this roadmap to them and start a new EU program for European language equality. This all has been kick-started. Like, the project is only for 1 year that I'm talking about right now, but this has been in the making for quite some years, because a lot of people have realized that if we want a world where we have multiple languages living next to each other and kind of have the values that we do with different languages, different cultures in the digital sphere, that we need to do something about this now. And hopefully this new EU program is going to mean like very, let's say, like very basic things, like more funding for language institutes for under-resourced languages, more funding for universities that teach about those languages, all this kind of stuff. As the European Union and the European Commission is mostly responsible for those like EU funding programs, this is what we're hoping to achieve. The results until now, I think that's the same for a lot of EU projects. There's a lot of reporting and analyzing, a lot of writing, all kinds of stuff. What I did find very helpful is that they came up with like a definition of the concept digital language equality, not so much like the sentence of what it is about, but more a metric that they have compiled on how to calculate this like digital readiness, or like to calculate digital equality. Like, how are we going to be able to see if anything changes for those languages, if like there's any progress that takes in like technological factors, but also a lot of contextual factors like what kind of resources do the members of those language communities have? How much spare time do they have? Like, do they actually have time to work on producing any kind of like resources for their languages and this kind of stuff? And what we've been involved on mainly is trying to get answers to a survey that has been spread throughout Europe. And this is also the reason why I'm here today, and what I wanted to discuss in the next 10 minutes with you about what we need to tell those people in the EU, what needs to change, so that we can actually work with and work well in those languages in our projects, and like keep those projects alive in the digital sphere. And I would all ask you to either like to, of course, ask questions also if you have those, but otherwise to leave your comments and your thoughts on, and like your wishes and your pains and all of this, so that we can include this when we are compiling the report for the EU. And hopefully this is going to make a difference, at least on a policy level in the future. So Mike, thank you for posting the Etherpad link again. I'm also going to go there with my screen sharing now, so don't be surprised. The way this can happen is that you can leave your comments in and your contributions in the Etherpad. What we are missing when working with small languages and what we need in the future for Wikidata, for the Wikipedias, for like all the Wikimedia projects to strive, but also to be a little bit visionary, and what we want the world to look like in the future if we are able to make a difference and to have those languages and keep those languages in the digital sphere. I'm also happy to take any real life comments. If you want to speak up, either just open your mic or raise your hand in the chat. And I'm just going to give some time for people to collect their thoughts. So I do see we get a few comments in the Etherpad, which I will give some time to formulate their thoughts before kind of summarizing and reading it out. I think we have like 6 more minutes, so we should be fine with time. Yeah, I think we have some very, very helpful comments here already. And also some very like basic things, right? That would make a difference. One of the comments is that we do need more people who know those languages, and like maybe not just like more people who know those languages, but also those like for those people to be able to contribute to like with their language to Wikimedia projects or like any resources on the internet, which is often a challenge because also like we heard yesterday in the keynotes, and also what Erika told us about the initiative of reimagining Wikidata from the margins. There is like very limited time resources also in local communities, and small language communities to contribute to all this kind of consultations, but also, yeah, kind of contribute or like to with their language to projects like ours. The first comment we have is it would be great to integrate resources from the EU DigiCamp in small languages. So Wikidata or any project from Wikimedia sphere could be used as a tool for acquiring those information literacy competences. Sorry, oh, it's been a long day. So am I reading that correctly, that we should integrate those kind of like language resources in our project? To enrich our projects with this kind of resources? Okay, and while we wait, we also have more comments on what we're missing and what would be good for us in the future is to have official dictionaries or similar resources, and if those were released under free licenses. Yes, exactly. I mean, this is I think a common problem with the so-called under-resourced languages, that there might be language resources available for those languages, but not under a free license, right? But like hidden somewhere. And then the question, if we have a step-by-step guide of things that we need to do, for example, start by translating MediaWiki to be able to continue contributing in their own languages and so on. Yes. This is also a very helpful comment. And now to get back to the EU DigiCamp, the digital competence framework. So it would be helpful to have Wikidata as an educational tool within that framework. Ah, okay, I get it. I mean, that would be great, yes. Okay. If anyone else wants to leave their comments and thoughts, I have, this is how you can reach me. Please, if you want to give your opinion, or if you want me to reach out to you for more input on this, that would be really helpful, by the way, for me. And I also think this potentially could make quite an impact for a lot of smaller communities and like the infrastructure they have, if they do end up getting better support on this scale. However, if you want to talk about this more, if you want to send me stuff that I need to read and that I need to know, reach out to me. This is my email address. You can also find me on Meta. And if I didn't miss any questions, or if I didn't miss any comments, which I don't think I have, I happily give up my presentation rights for the next person. And maybe I see you all in the language discussion at the end of this track.
Thank you very much, Maria. I didn't notice any other questions in the chat or elsewhere.
Yeah, me neither.
So if presentation can be handed over to the next person.
Yeah, so I've just attributed the presentation rights again. We will not start the session. Will not stop the session now, but wait a little longer and have like a longer recording.
Perfect.
So, yeah, okay. I see a video in progress. Yay! Hello.
Good Abend. Hello,
Yay.
everyone.
Hello. Sound is also working great. Do you want to upload a PDF or share your screen?
Yeah, I will share my screen.
Do you see the little screen sharing thingy underneath the big whiteboard?
Let's see. Do you see my screen?
It's in progress. Something's happening, definitely. Yes. Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah. So, guten Abend. I'm honored to be here to present another view about the Wiki Functions and Abstract Wikipedia project. Well, I'm Houcemeddine, Turkey, from Wikimedia Tunisia and the University of Sfax, Tunisia. Well, let me just begin by a brief introduction about us. So the University of Sfax is located in Tunisia. It is 270 kilometers from Tunis, the capital. It is one leading public university in Tunisia, and it is one of the leading African universities in computer science research. Well, Data Engineering and Semantics Research Unit is a recently created research unit at the University of Sfax. It is specialized in many areas of computer science. The one major achievement in the context of the Wikimedia movement is the development of computer applications driven by Wikimedia projects for sustaining the digitization in Arab countries and in Africa. We have many high-referred papers in scholarly journals, and we have established formal collaboration with the Wikimedia community through joint projects with Wikimedia Tunisia. Concerning Abstract Wikipedia, the project began on May 22, 2020, after its approval by the Board of Trustees of Wikimedia Foundation. It aims to reduce the concerns about the lack of coverage of many topics in most Wikimedia projects, particularly Wikipedia. It is a part of the 9th point of the Wikimedia 2030 strategy, innovation in free knowledge, and it tries to create a platform for the automated creation of articles about Wikidata items by 2023. Okay, the team has been appointed by the Wikimedia Foundation under the supervision of Dr. Denny Frandicic. Well, it also involved Lukas Werkmeister from Wikimedia Deutschland as a volunteer. He has contributed a lot to the back end and to the front end of the project. Okay, we will start with an introduction about how Wiki functions at Abstract Wikipedia have evolved. Well, Wikipedia involves many languages, about 317 languages, about 55.6 million articles. But there is a bias in the coverage of topics across the distinct language editions of Wikipedia. In fact, English Wikipedia involves 6 million articles. However, Arabic includes only 6. Well, when going into details, we found out that a significant subset of A3 edition of Wikipedia does not have its equivalent in other language edition of Wikipedia. For example, 19,000 articles in Kurdish Wikipedia do not exist in Arabic Wikipedia. Another example is that 683 articles in Moroccan Wikipedia do not exist in Arabic Wikipedia. And to sum up, there are 20 million distinct topics across the language editions of Wikipedia. However, only 1 million is covered by Arabic Wikipedia. So, the Arabic Wikipedia cannot create 19 million articles by hand from scratch. The solution then is to use the semantic information about the Wikidata items governing all these Wikipedia articles to create articles about the entities not supported by the Arabic Wikipedia. Well, to do that, we need 3 ingredients. The first one is the names of Wikidata entities in natural languages and Wikidata statements. The second is a lexical database for natural languages, lexemes, forms, and senses. And the third one is database for linguistic rules. Well, as you already know, Wikidata involves many items, and all of these items have their names, their alternative names, their description in many natural languages. And they are described using many statements. As well, there is a lexical database for natural languages, including many lexemes, forms, and senses. And this does exist in Wikidata thanks to the Lexicographical Data project. However, the database for linguistic rules does not exist in Wikidata, and that's why there was a need to create this kind of database. This is why Wikifunctions has emerged as a new project to represent linguistic rules. In fact, linguistic rules will be represented as functions having, for example, text as inputs and having one only output. Well, Wikifunctions is more than just an abstract database for linguistic functions. In fact, several other types of functions are needed to build linguistic ones, such as mathematical and logical functions. Furthermore, there are other types of functions that should exist in Wikifunctions, such as biological, engineering, physical, and medical functions. This kind of languages, alongside the linguistic functions, can be used to drive many interesting applications of Wikidata, for example, in the context of clinical decision support, in the context of the validation of Wikidata statements, for the generation of new knowledge, for Wikidata based on existing Wikidata statements and lexemes. It can be used in Sparkle queries. It can be used in Wikimedia tools, templates, bots, and user scripts. Okay, why linguistic functions are important? In fact, linguistic functions can be used for natural language generation and for the validation and arrangement of lexicographical data and Wikidata labels in Wikidata. It can be also used for machine translation of Wikipedia articles. By contrast to machine learning methods such as the one discussed by Lucy McAfee, the use of functions allows the transparent tracking and troubleshooting of flaws. Well, how does Wikifunctions work? Well, it is simple. To create a function, we need three items: function item, implementation item, and tester item. For examples of that, you can refer to the beta edition created by Luke at wikilambda.toolforge.org. Okay. Concerning the function item, it allows to define the function through adding its name and description in multiple languages, specifying the names and types of the inputs, precising the type of the output. It does not currently allow to link the function and its input to their equivalents in Wikidata. And such an improvement can be useful to automate the use of the functions. As well, Wikidata item and lexemes cannot be used as inputs. Input should be rather string, value, char, boolean, etc. Okay. Concerning the implementation item, it includes an implementation of the function in a programming language. We have here three supported languages, which are Python, JavaScript, and Lua. The implementation item can instead define an association of other open functions that can be used to return the required output. Inputs are called in the implementation using their identifiers as defined in the function items. For example, the first defined input in the function item, it's assigned the identifier key1, and so on. And to ensure that the implemented function can be run using Wikifunctions, the implementation item should be linked to the function item. Okay, concerning the first tester item, it involves a test value for every input of the function, as well as the expected value of the output. As you see here, it should be linked to the function item to enable its use for the validation of the implementation items. Okay. Although there are several achievements in the process of creating wiki functions, bugs still exist. For example, there are delays in running the front end, etc. So upgrade is required. So now Aishwarya has been hired as UX developer to develop the new interface for a better user experience for wiki functions, as you see here on the screen. Okay, I have already proposed these slides for another conference, which is the Wiki Arabia conference, held online several weeks ago. And when interacting with the audience, we found out several challenges that should be considered.
We seem to have lost him. Wait a minute, see if he comes back.
So,
Hello, are you still there?
okay, sorry for the minor thing here. I will go back.
Ideally,
Okay,
without video,
I
I would suggest.
Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so we have arrived to the challenges proposed by the audience of Wiki Arabia to 2021. There are 5 main challenges that have not been supported by the Wiki functions community yet. It seems that it is another mountain that is hiding the mountain we are working on. The first challenge there is that the data models for the lexicographical data available in Wikidata should be adapted to the morphology of every covered language. There are several examples: the accusative dative for German, the root and pattern generation of lexemes in Arabic, etc. And then beyond the system messages that should be translated using Translate Wiki, for example, Translate Wiki. There are the system messages for the embedded compiler that should be translatable to enable the understanding of flaws by non-English Wikimedia users. Well, to be frank with you, there are limited works that have been already done by the computer science community in this context. And I think that this should be done from scratch. As well, I refer you to the decolonizing the internet structured data and should be adapted to electricity. Well, there were discussions about how to improve the community governance to achieve this, but there is also a technical component in that. In fact, the region-based logical constraints and data models should be developed for validating the Wikidata statements and to support the semantic particularities in countries. As well, we should check the adaptability of wiki functions and abstract Wikipedia to cover non-Latin scripts. For example, we should investigate the effect of NFC normalization for the Arabic script and the Arabic diacritics. Okay. Okay, these are the references for this work. These are the image credits. So thank you for following this presentation. I will be happy to receive questions in Arabic languages, French, English, Italian, German, and Maltese, but most certainly I will answer them mostly in English, as I am not keen on all these languages. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the talk. We still have 5 minutes, so if anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
I'm just checking there's nothing in the Etherpad at the moment and nothing in the chat.
Yeah, there is a question of Adel. In fact, he said that there are many duplicates inside across the Wikidata items, and maybe we should check that to eliminate the duplicate values and merge items. I think that this is also a challenge about working with Wikipedias and with Wikidata.
Yeah, the good thing with Wikidata is it's very easy to merge items together.
Yeah, but we should have the community to do that. So maybe we should create some tools to do that automatically based on common statements, for example, or language similarity, etc. So that's the point. Yeah, it is difficult to do that, actually. But we should try. In fact, there are many works that are done actually by Wikimedia Deutschland in this context, but I don't know how far they went through that. Okay, any other question?
I think if not, well, we'll wait for Mahir who's typing, but if not, then we can wrap it up here and move on to the next speaker.
Yeah, I will be here for the languages discussion. So you can answer in details and you can write your question here and I will go through that in the discussion.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, let's send over to Alicia.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you very much, bye.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Can hear you, can see you, can't see your slides yet.
Yeah, because let's see, here was a window that I wanted to. There we go. I think we have about 1 minute left in any case, according to my clock.
Yeah, it's up to you if you want to start
Yeah,
now or
just
wait for a
make
minute.
sure everyone who wanted to join us
Okay.
is here.
We can see the Wikidata homepage.
Yeah, there. I will be mostly showing practical things, so no slides. Let's see if everything is in order. And I have this window. I'll just check the. Yes. Perfect. Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Fagerving. I am a developer at Wikimedia Sweden, but I am doing this presentation in my volunteer capacity. Lexemes, maybe let's start with everyone writing in the chat whether you have edited Lexeme and whether you liked it or not. Because when I first started editing mostly Swedish lexemes, it became quite obvious that doing it using just the Wikidata interface is not a very convenient way of doing that. Like, one thing is that it's not super easy to search for lexemes. You have to prefix your search with an L if you want to find something in the lexeme namespace. Fortunately, several community members have created helpful tools and user scripts that make this work much more efficient. The first tool that I would like to show, that I rely on a lot, is called Ordia, which is basically the interface to use if you want to explore and edit lexemes. You can get access to useful statistics about the various languages represented in the lexeme namespace. And when you look at this list, it becomes obvious that many languages that have a lot of speakers are not represented in this list. So this list basically reflects the fact that there are a couple volunteers for each of these languages that are really active and eager to edit lexemes. And in general, the user base of lexeme Wikidatans is quite small. I have this query to show all the user accounts that have done edits in the lexeme namespace, and that's only about 2,000 people, including some bots. And here are some familiar faces. And as you can see, the most active users have a lot of edits. And then there's the long tail of users who have made only a couple edits. And this is obviously reflected in the language top list. But what can you do with Ordia? You can search for a lexeme very easily. I'm searching for the word bil, which is the Swedish word for car. And here it gives me a couple suggestions. Let's look at it both on Wikidata and in the Ordia interface. If we compare how they look like, we can see that, for example, we have this long list of forms, which is structured in a bit more condensed way here. And something that I really like a lot is something that you can't see in Wikidata directly at all. That is all the compounds that have the word bil as its part. If I wanted to see this list in Wikidata, I would have to write a Sparkle query. But here this is done for me. And we can even see a very nice graph showing all these compounds, and even some further steps in the chain. So you can see that the word bil car is part of the word glassbil, which means ice cream van. And then we have the word glassbilsförare, which is ice cream van driver. And of course, this all is dependent on the fact that Wikidata editors have actually added the information about compounds, and there is still a lot left to do. And the other functionality in Ordia that I use a lot is the tool text to lexemes. Because when you want to create new lexemes, you obviously want to know which of them already exist and which don't. And searching for them by hand takes a lot of time. So in this window, I can paste any text. Let's see, I have this couple paragraphs from a Wikipedia article about a, well, what is it? It's a milling machine. I say that this text is in Swedish. I wait a couple seconds. And here it highlights the words that it couldn't find. So for example, here I have the word bearbetningsmaskiner, which means processing machines. So I want to create a lexeme for the word bearbetningsmaskin, processing machine in singular. I click on this word. It says it doesn't exist, but it's the plural. So, well, I think that I don't know if there's a way to do it more efficiently, is that I simply remove this part from the URL. And this thing is a direct link to another tool that is really, really useful and important for lexeme editors. Wikidata lexeme forms. It has documentation, and the way it works, it has a bunch of settings for a bunch of languages. They are all created by the community. If you want to add your language, the instructions are here, and also all the templates can be edited. And I want to create a noun in Swedish. If I want to create a noun, I have some options. Which grammatical gender does this noun have? I get this simple form where I can input all the grammatical forms, and a new lexeme will be created in Wikidata, and all the forms will be tagged with their respective grammatical features. And when I want to create a word using Ordia, I simply click on that this is a Swedish noun and of the common gender, as we call it in Swedish. And I get redirected to lexeme forms with the first field filled out for me. And there we go. It makes a new lexeme on Wikidata for me. Another thing that lexeme forms can do is that I can make a batch of lexemes at the same time. A typical use case is where you have a bunch of words that have the same, that follow the same grammatical pattern. So they are all inflected the same way. So here it provides a little help, and all the forms that are separated by the pipe are the same things that you saw in that little form for a single word. I have actually prepared a little batch, and a very cool thing is that I don't have to know which of these already exist in Wikidata, because when I click on create, it will check this for me, and it won't create duplicates. Yep, it says that this already existed, so we didn't create it. But here we have a couple of new lexemes. Here I have the word cykelverkstad, which means bike workshop. And this is a compound noun, which consists of the parts bike and workshop. So I want to add that to say that this is a compound. And here is the third very, very useful tool that everyone who edits lexemes should add, is the lexeme entity suggester user script. What it does is that if I click on add statement, in a normal case, I would have to start typing the property I need and remember what it's called. But this script has a number of settings for a lot of languages, where it has some predefined properties that are often used with Swedish lexemes. So I don't have to search for it. It makes a suggestion for me. And you can add the lexeme entity suggester to your local common.js by importing it. So I go back here, combines, and if I didn't have the entity suggester active, then again, I would have to start typing to find the lexemes it combines. But here it made also a little smart suggestion list for me. So I can see that I have to actually check which of these two this is. And this is the second declension one. I add qualifier that this is the first part. And I also add that this is the second part. While I'm at it, I can also add a usage example. And since we're working with Swedish, I want to point out that some Swedish community members have done a great work importing data about Swedish Parliament documents into Wikidata. And we've actually been using those to add examples. Here I have such a document that I have found that has an example sentence, and I have installed an add-on to Firefox that is called Entity Explosion. And what this thing does is that it looks at the ID of this Parliament document in the URL and makes a quick search in Wikidata to see whether it has a Wikidata item. And it does. So I can add this as an example sentence. I can say which grammatical form it demonstrates. And since this document has a Wikidata item, it's very easy for me to add it as a reference. Perfect. Let's see. There are all the other things that I wanted to. A very useful thing, if you want to work with lexemes a lot, is to have a set of Sparkle queries that you can use for maintenance work or to find lexemes that are weird or unusual in some way and that potentially need improvement. I have such a list of all possible things in my user space. Feel free to copy it and adjust all the queries to your preferred languages. For example, I can find nouns in Swedish that don't have a grammatical gender, because all nouns in Swedish should have a grammatical gender. Or I can see lexemes that don't have grammatical forms. And those are important to add. I actually want to.
There's 2 minutes left.
Sorry? Oh yeah, yes, yes.
2 minutes.
Yes. And another cool thing is the Wikidata Lexicographical Coverage project, which attempts to calculate the coverage of languages in the lexeme namespace based on content from Wikipedia. So if I go, for example, to Danish, that I clicked on for some reason, and most frequent missing forms, then I can see that the Danish word for northwest occurs a lot of times in Danish Wikipedia, but it does not exist as a lexeme on Wikidata. Thank you. That was just a small part of what I do and how I work with lexemes. I'm going to look at your chat, and I'm going to pop into the language discussion later.
All right. My name is Sadik Shahadu. I am based in Tamale, Ghana, and this session will deal briefly on Wikidata and how it can support minority languages. So I'll be talking specifically for the Dagbani Wikipedia. I'm a contributor for the Dagbani Wikipedia and an administrator for the Dagbani Wikipedia. So in this session, I am going to walk you through how you can add, your language on your user page to be able to contribute to Wikidata in your own language, which means you can type or describe labels and in your own language. So I'm going to open Wikidata. Okay, I'm already logged in. So if you can see my screen on Wikidata, first of all, to be able to add multiple languages, you will need to add the language bubble. And to do that, you need to click on your account or your username. Once I click on my username, I will click on edit source, and then I put the language bubble. Okay, I've safely typed it somewhere. Then I'll copy it and then paste it on my user page on Wikidata. So I'll paste it like this. This means I have selected some number of languages. I have French, Arabic, Hausa, Chi, Akan, Mampuli, Dagbani, and then English. You can add as many languages as you like, provided you can speak them. And you also need to describe the level that you understand the language. So I'll go ahead and publish on my user page. Okay, once I publish that, I see something like this, the bubble user information, which says this user has professional knowledge of English. This user has native understanding of Dagbani. This user has near speaker knowledge of Mampuli. This user has intermediate knowledge of Akan. This user has intermediate knowledge of Chi. This user has intermediate knowledge of Hausa, and then Arabic, also for French. If you understand these languages, you just add them. If you understand more than this, you can also include them as well. So how do I add Wikidata, connect or link Wikidata items to Dagbani Wikipedia? In other words, I want to import information from Wikidata directly to the Dagbani Wikipedia, especially for new Wikipedia pages in Dagbani. So I am going to create an article for, first of all, let me search and see how many languages this has on Paris. I'll just use Paris as an example. Capital and largest city of France. So once I open Paris, I will look through the languages. I can see Dagbani because I added Dagbani to my user page. I see Arabic, I see French, Hausa, and Chi. So these are the languages that I've added to my user page, which means I can describe labels or add descriptions of Wikidata items in these languages. So specifically, when you look at Dagbani, you realize there's no label defined and no description attached to Dagbani for Paris. Now, I will need to also confirm whether the Dagbani, there's an article on Dagbani called Paris. So to do that, I'll scroll down to Wikipedia below here. Yes, so I can see the number of Wikipedia entries. We have 263 entries for Paris on Wikipedia. Let me see if I can find Dagbani. So I need to check to see if there's Dagbani. Okay, since there's no Dagbani, then I'll go to the Dagbani Wikipedia. I just switch to Dagbani Wikipedia homepage. If you can still see my screen, I think I'm sharing my whole screen. So to create an article, I will just type Paris in Dagbani. what I'm trying to do is to link article Dagbani, Paris on Dagbani Wikipedia to Wikidata. So Nam Ya Alma. So in Dagbani, it means this article does not exist, as you can see in red. So I need to create it. Because I have translator attached, it shows if I can translate from English, but I'm not going to translate. I only want to import from Wikidata using data box. So Paris, I will have to put Paris, what Paris is in Dagbani.
Just say 2 minutes.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, 2 minutes left.
Okay. So, oh, sure. So, Tinzol France, which means Paris is the capital and the largest city in France. Then I'll publish. I've just created an article, Paris and Dagbani. So now I need to link it to Wikidata. To do that, I'll scroll down and click on Edit. I'll click on Edit. Still loading. Okay, so I'll click on Edit. Then I'll type, oops. Yeah. Now I need to add the Dagbani description and label in the Wikidata item. So I'll come to the top of the article where I can directly edit.
Seem to have lost him. Just wait a minute, see if he comes back. I think we're close to the end of this session anyway. Okay, unfortunately he seems to have disconnected completely. He's coming back. Okay, give him just a minute. Okay, I think we should actually just move on to the next talk. We'll see if we can revisit Sadik at the end, maybe. So next is Mahir. You can transfer the presenter rights, please.
All right. Hold on.
Yay.
Hello.
Hello.
Let me see. Let me first share my slides. Okay, so those are visible, I hope?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. In that case, good morning. It's morning for me, at least. Good afternoon and evening to those of you in that situation. My name is Mahir. I go by Mahir256 on Wikimedia projects. And today I'll be presenting to you a concept. It's not a finished idea by any means, but it's something that I hope will make conversations about abstract Wikipedia and what it could possibly do a lot more tangible and less hypothetical. So first of all, what's the big deal? Well, as we know and has been repeated many times, abstract Wikipedia is coming. And it'll be powered not just by Wikidata, but by a very wide world of functionality known as wiki functions. This whole system is supposed to be community-driven in terms of the development of this functionality. But with regard to Abstract Wikipedia's goal of text generation, there's still a lot of preparation that needs to be done to make generating text sufficiently comprehensive. And yes, Jan, I know that you know that it's tangible, so that's great. Again, there's still a lot of preparation that needs to be done, and yet for some languages, there's already a number of things we can do that are interesting. Before we do that, I mean, just to briefly rehash the background, lexemes are just items for words. They have information about how they manifest in actual speech. They have information about what they mean in context or even in isolation. They might have information about where they came from, and so much more. And of course, there's more than 500,000 lexemes. The problem, of course, is that most of those lexemes don't actually have meanings attached to them. I mean, you can make a bot and create 100,000 lexemes, but if we don't know what they mean, then what's the point? You know. Similarly, with Abstract Wikipedia, it's just turning ideas into readable sentences. We have these objects which represent things in a language-neutral fashion. Items, properties, and the Z objects of that are proposed for wiki functions, and they're joined together to create complex ideas and transform into natural language. And this presentation is really just saying, okay, what do these constructors and renderers even look like? For which I say, enter Ninai. It is the classical Tamil word for to think, and it's the name I give for this high-level text generation function infrastructure. It is not the functions themselves, but it can hold individual constructors. It can hold renderers for them in different languages, as well as extra functions that tie them together, and functions that can find lexemes or items for given items and lexemes. We have to have a mapping from the concepts we want to express to the meanings of the words that we use to write them or speak them. And so there's functionality in Ninai to do all of those things ultimately at a very high level. On the other side is Udiran, which is from the Sanskrit word using the pronunciation that Bengali speakers use for speaking, which is essentially the low-level equivalent of Ninai. It basically holds functions that construct tree structures, because you can diagram any given sentence using a sort of tree pattern to represent relationships between words. There's a relationship between a last name and a first name in a person's name. There are things like subjects, objects, verbs. There's some relationship between them that could be expressed. In addition, these functions might help pick the right forms. If you want to inflect a noun for gender or number, it'll pick the right form for you. And beyond that, it will also have functions that process them and sort of join them into individual sentences. The last piece of code here, which you should recognize as Python code, is essentially a call to a separate library which exists purely to make manipulating Wikidata items and lexemes easier in Python code. Because PyWikibot's not very good at that. It just doesn't work for lexemes, and so we sort of have to use other tools for that. And this is what I propose. I think for Abstract Wikipedia, we can probably get rid of that last line. Now, I've mentioned a lot of interesting things that seem probably very amazing at first glance. You might have a lot of questions, but before I proceed further, I just want to clarify: it can't handle every language yet. It can't handle every sentence in every language. It probably can't use every lexeme in every language. And what currently works for one language may not cleanly port to another language. There might be some exceptions that the functionality that I'm about to exhibit may not even handle. Nevertheless, this is enough of a proof of concept that I've spoken with a number of people about the output from this, and it's correct to the extent that it's able to generate certain things. But just join me, and together we can work to definitely fix all of the points that are on this page. What I wrote as a Bengali, English, and partial Spanish speaker is probably not going to. It probably exhibits a sort of worldview that's probably not suitable for other languages. I was implementing, and you'll see in the following examples, I was implementing renderers and constructors for Bengali, German, and Swedish. I don't speak German and Swedish. I've had to talk to people to see whether the output from this system is correct. But nevertheless, what you're about to see has been judged correct by those speakers. Enough about that clarification. Let's move on just to actual examples. So we can build up to a sentence like one step at a time by introducing these things that I call constructors and how we might put them together. So the first two constructors that I'll introduce are concepts, which are essentially, you give it a Wikidata item and it'll pick a lexeme representing it via a set of linkages between items and lexemes. And this notion of identification, saying, okay, we have two things, let's say that they're the same thing. Let's indicate that. And you'll see that with the code in the center, we can get, the Bengali sentence on the left and the Swedish sentence on the right. We can expand on this sentence a bit by clarifying that not all planets are Jupiter. The previous sentence was just making an equivalence between the concept of Jupiter and the concept of planet. But we can instead say, okay, let's refer to Jupiter as an instance of a planet. So Jupiter is a planet. There's another constructor to specify that, namely instance. And when we insert instance in the appropriate place, we get the sentences on the left and the right, which you can see are slightly different. There's an indication of referring to an individual instance of a planet, for example. We might clarify this even further by saying we're not just talking about any non-specific planet or just a general thing that we might conceive of. There's an actual specific object that we're talking about here with respect to the name Jupiter. It is the planet. It is a specific thing. We can clarify that with definite here, and as you can see, not all the constructors need to have inputs. They can just be extra things you tack on in the middle of a sentence or in the middle of a set of constructors, and you'll see that the relationship between the word for Jupiter and the word for planet has changed slightly, and there's the definite marker at the end of the Swedish sentence. Further, we can also, clarify via, just assigning attributes, adjectives or other, descriptive features, if you will, to individual objects in this, system. So, for example, we have an item for the concept large that we can use to attribute a planet as having, using the attribution constructor. And you'll see that the word for large in Bengali and Swedish shows up in the appropriate place. In addition, we might even want to, specify that the concept of being large is a superlative thing. It is the largest such thing that that is being attributed to. In other words, this is the largest planet. That's what a superlative is. And you'll see that we get the appropriate constructions for the superlative in both of these languages. And at the very end, we might specify that, okay, it is the largest, but in what context is it the largest? And to that end, we might say that it's the largest, with respect to the solar system. Jupiter isn't the largest planet ever. There are other large planets and other stars, probably. So we might say, oh, it's the largest planet in the solar system. And we might specify a location this way. And we can see that based on the item for the solar system being present in the code, we can get the word for the solar system to appear in both of these examples. Now, this has all been Python. I should note before I go on that this has all been Python code, but the idea of abstract Wikipedia having items for functions essentially will allow us to translate the individual labels here. So we might be able to read this entire set of code in an entirely different language. Unfortunately, Python doesn't have this functionality very easily, and the Python support on abstract Wikipedia or on wiki functions isn't quite complete yet. So we're sort of stuck in this position where I'm just going to use English names for these things. Now, how did this all happen? I was hinting again that there should be links to items. That's this entire bullet point. But what's more important is that there are senses on things. There are meanings to words. I mentioned previously that most lexemes don't have meanings. And so the examples that I'm using here are really pertaining to those lexemes that do have meanings. It's possible to do something with them. If you wanted me to do something right now with Estonian, I couldn't do that because Estonian lexemes don't have meanings. Similarly, for a lot of lexemes in other languages, where someone just imports the whole thing and then just leaves without telling us what these words mean. It's important that we know what they mean. If they don't have links to items, we can link to other translations of words. We can link to other synonyms so that we can refine, how do we go, make a path from the item for sleeping to the German schlafen, which is the lexeme shown on the right, or the sense shown on the right. And there's so much more information that we can add to refine how we decide to use these senses. In addition, not only do lexemes represent individual words, they can represent things with multiple parts. You saw in Alicia's session a lexeme that had 2 parts, but each part each part had a position in the overall lexeme. Nevertheless, if even though a multi-part lexeme might have a part, that part might manifest differently from what it says at the very top of the page, and there's some meaning that is being carried over between the part and then the overall lexeme of which it forms a part. And just as I mentioned with tree structures, even multi-part lexemes might have structure within them. And in fact, for some of the examples, that structure is taken advantage of in this case. Now I've given a number of property IDs to represent how individual concepts manifest or how we can mark these concepts, I should say. But there's 2 more properties created very recently that have made working on this will be a lot more interesting. The first one is a link between an individual sense for a verb and an item representing the action that is expressed by that verb. So these German examples are essentially they take the items for working and I believe is sleeping, and they apply them by saying that, okay, we're describing an action. It's the action of working. It's taking place yesterday. Some languages have a yesterday tense, so we're using that. This is just a very subtle acknowledgement that not everything is past, present, future, and not everything in this is complete. We can insert concepts from other languages as needed, so long as those concepts can be rendered properly. And we can say that, oh, the thing that's doing the working is a beekeeper, a specific beekeeper, hence the der. And similarly for the other 2 sentences, with different tenses and then with different things doing the action. This is how we specify that certain things are doing the action. Another property that's important, and I was mentioning with things doing actions, is this idea of a thematic relation. It's like if you've heard of subjects, objects, direct objects, etc. It's kind of like that, except that for example, here's a number of sentences saying, I pushed you yesterday, I fly today, I will push you tomorrow. Now in all these sentences, I is like a subject and you is a direct object. But for other languages, you might be a direct object, and I might be a subject, or you might be a subject, and I might be a direct object. And so rather than saying, what's it called? Instead of saying, let's just assign things to subject-object, this item for pushing might be linked to a verb that uses subject for the pusher and object for the pushee, and also to another verb that uses the pushee as the subject and the pusher as the object. We don't know. I don't know that there's a language that does that, but this is intended to allow that possibility, essentially. So again, this is the item for pushing, and this is the item for flying, and we've specified that the person that's doing the pushing and the person being pushed in each of these cases. And again, the same tenses as before. Now, enough about properties. Here's just some fun stuff that I've done with this, both out of an interest in diversifying ideas for this, and also because it kind of got boring just trying to implement individual property handling. So the first is just simple auto descriptions. Well, one thing that drove I think once this got implemented, it got a lot more interesting for a lot of people, and so. Basically, we see that for this first sentence, for example, we have an item for Lucerne, we have an item for city, and then we have an item for Switzerland. Each of these is linked to a lexeme, and these are all combined like so to yield a very nice, lead sentence for an article, for example. Now, Lucerne and Bayern do have lexemes, but Douglas Adams and Annalena Bayerbach do not. This was actually a little hack that I had to add in, whereby if Douglas Adams doesn't have a lexeme, we just use the label from the Wikidata item, the German label in this case, and pass that around as needed. But you can see that it comes out to a really nice set of sentences here. And I imagine that due to the similarities that exist between German and Swedish, trying to port this to Swedish wouldn't be too difficult, but I haven't actually tried that myself. And maybe I will do that. I don't know. Another thing that I tried to do, and this was just fun for myself, is trying to reproduce the lyrics of Bengali songs, or some lyrics of Bengali songs, to the extent that I'm able to. And so these are the opening lines to two different songs, arranged slightly differently, of course. But you can sort of, to those people who are familiar with Kishore Kumar will recognize both of these sets of lines as the openings to two different songs. And just for kicks, I tried rendering the first of those examples in Swedish as well, and it worked out very splendidly. I think this was actually when I first started to work on handling tenses and the notion of existence, or this constructor saying that there exists this other thing. Yeah, it was a sad song, but I don't know. When I was growing up, my father listened to a lot of songs like that. Anyway, so that was the end of demonstrating a lot of things. So again, we have an actual thing we can talk about now with regard to language generation. But keep in mind, though, that neither abstract Wikipedia nor wiki functions exist yet, and so if you wanted to port these things directly, you might run into a lot of differences, and you might have to adjust portions of your entire plan in terms of lexeme development. That being said, I mean, the things that I mentioned, I hope that you can take them to heart, and in terms of your future development of lexemes, take advantage of them and plan around them. Like, if you don't have senses, go add senses. If you don't have links to other senses, add links to other senses. And things like that. Make it easier for yourself later, once this becomes official, to make text generation happen quickly. And again, thank you all so much. Check out the code there. There's a nice link of a list of verbs which have predicate for and has thematic relation. I am Mahir 256 on everything. There's a Telegram chat that I linked earlier in the chat in this Big Blue Button instance, and just go to the talk page if you're not comfortable with any of the other platforms I mentioned before. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mahir. So if we can just have a minute, go back to Sadik's presentation just to finish that in less than a minute. So if Sadik can have the presenter rights, yeah. And then after that, we'll have a general discussion. So we'll have everyone back for a discussion then.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can see your screen.
All right, great. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I don't know where I got cut off. I think I couldn't hear anybody, so I thought I was just talking to people.
You were just having a Skype link, I think.
Okay, so I'm going back to Dagbani, show you the info box I have generated from Wikidata for Dagbani Wikipedia on Paris. So now when you click on Paris, you should see very long info box in the Dagbani Wikipedia. So anybody can just come and edit this page. Volunteers can contribute to this page. So basically, this was exactly what I wanted to show. How did I do that? I added a data box. When you click on edit source on this page, you will see that I added a data box which generated the list, the info box with all the information from Wikidata. And I also added, before you do that, you need to make sure the article exists on Dagbani. The name for that item doesn't have to be the same. If it's different in your language, you type it as it is. Then you come to the languages entries for Wikipedia on Wikidata. So I will just scroll down to where I added the Dagbani. It's a very long item. So when I click on this edit, I can now add, so I added the Dagbani. So you can see the Dagbani label and description on Paris. Okay. So the Dagbani has been added, and I also added a label because I added the bubble to my user page. I'll be able to describe the item Paris in Dagbani and all the other languages that I added to my user page. This is Paris in Dagbani. France. France. So you can see the description in Dagbani and then the label Paris. So that is all. If you have any question, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much, Sadik. So we're now going into the general discussion. So if everyone that's presented in this session could rejoin and turn on the videos, it would be great. I believe Maria will be facilitating this. So if Maria could have the presentation rights, please.
Oh, I don't need, there's not going to be a presentation. But still, it feels good to have the presentation rights anyway.
Gives you the option.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to wait a bit for everyone to show up.
I think we're missing Alicia and Sadik. Over to you. I think
Alicia.
You finished promptly at the end of the hour.
Yes. I think the discussion runs until 5. So hello, everyone. Nice to be in a room with all of you. So Susanna asked me if I could take over hosting that discussion a little bit, and I happily accepted. Welcome, everyone. So I guess a few of you were in the language track, so have seen the people who are sitting here at the moment in the past couple of hours. But if not, I would say we still do a little round of introduction and adding what we were talking about. I'm going to start. My name is Maria. I was talking about an EU project that Wikimedia Deutschland is doing at the moment about under-researched languages. Alicia, maybe you can go next, just because you're next on my screen, right next to me.
Sure. My name is Alicia. I normally work at Wikimedia Sweden. I was talking in my volunteer capacity about the tools that I use to edit lexemes in Swedish.
Houcemeddine, you're next on my screen.
Yeah. So I'm present in Turkey. I'm actually from Wikimedia Tunisia at the University of Sfax in Tunisia. Well, what I presented is the community point of view about wiki functions and abstract Wikipedia projects and how they can be used to enrich Wikidata and sustain it.
All right, then we have Mahir on my screen. You go ahead.
Sure. Hi, my name is Mahir. I am a graduate student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And what I was presenting on is not related to my research, but it was a text generation system, a prototype system for generating text using Wikidata items and lexemes.
And then we have Sadik as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sadik from the Dagbani Wikimedia User Group. and my session was centered around adding multiple languages and Wikidata user page, so you can describe labels in your own language. I also introduce participants to DataBox, how you can import InfoBox from Wikidata to the Dagban Wikipedia, and also linking Wikidata to Dagban Wikipedia. Yeah.
Yes, thank you everyone for that very nice round of introductions. So this was an open discussion, right? Everyone in the chat, everyone who's here and who has like pressing or not so pressing question about any of the topics that we were talking about, or about languages in Wikidata, the Wikimedia projects in general, please type in the chat until your fingers hurt. I will then read them out and post the questions to the speakers. I have not seen any unanswered questions from the sessions, I think. There was one about Mahir's code that I think got answered and linked. However, I did bring some questions after hearing all of your talks now, which I would start asking, if that's okay with you, because I have the honor to be the host, so I can be the one who asks the questions. I'm starting with the first one I heard, which was from Houcemeddine. Your last slide made me think the most when you were presenting the challenges that you see with wiki functions. However, I was wondering, what do you think what like the most pressing challenge is at the moment, so that like the whole thing can actually like roll out and start and be great and awesome?
Okay, just a brief note about these challenges. Well, these challenges was the feedback of the same presentation during Wiki Arabia 2021 conference. So it is rather what Arabic community sees when talking about wiki functions at abstract Wikipedia. Well, the most important challenge for me is that we should try to ameliorate the wiki functions kind of front end by letting it accessible for all people first, and second, by letting it translatable across languages, because we have two challenges here. We have the system messages, and we have the system messages that kind of explain the errors in codes. So we have to let them both translatable. And I think that there is no work on this. And maybe we should start it from now so that we can achieve something concrete when the project will be issued, because it will be issued soon. I think in 2022, we can have an edition that can be deployed of wiki functions. And I think this is the priority. As well, for the lexicographical data, I think that some work on constraints and on adaptation to the regional context can be done as well, so that the natural language generation thing after wiki function will be issued can be easier to do.
Quite big challenges. All right, now we also have some questions from the chat. We have Nicholas who asks, I guess a basic need for everyone and all tools is to improve participation on Lexis. So how can we attract more users and better contents? A big question for many community projects, and I think Alicia has the answer.
Well, I don't have the answer, but I have a lot of issues that I find annoying and prohibitive. All the things that I showed, it's find this tool, add this user script, go to that tool, and to this tool. This all is extremely complex if you want to encourage newcomers. And the Wikidata interface, just the pure Wikidata interface, is really not good for editing lexemes. So if all these functionalities could be used out of the box when you go to Wikidata, that would be an enormous step towards lowering this threshold.
Right, I agree. Someone asked at the beginning of their talk if like people edit lexemes, and I was going to answer. I tried, but shamefully had to give up. So yeah, that is a big thing, and as far as I understood Lydia's input from earlier, the UI for lexemes is something like in the pipeline for the Wikidata development. So let's hope that will make a difference for more users and new users.
Yeah, but also another thing is that there is a lot of data that people input manually or half manually, and if we had CC0 licensed sources of well-structured linguistic data that would be available for importing to the lexeme namespace, that would be great, because right now people are investing a lot of work into doing all this stuff from scratch.
Yes, I think that's a problem for many what is called under-resourced languages, that they don't have that data available, and if it is available, it's hidden and not freely licensed.
Yeah, because that is the reason why we can't just import all the data from Wiktionary, because Wiktionary is CC BY and Wikidata is CC0.
I'm going to look into the chat to see if we have more questions. So another question is, do we have good examples projects that worked in terms of lexemes, I presume, unlike some bad batch imports? All right, anyone who wants to take this question here?
I know that there was a big import of Basque lexemes with a lot of well-structured forms, but I don't know the details of who did it. But it was some foundation that actually released open data.
If anyone knows more about this, also please just add to the chat.
I think the most comprehensive import I can think of that worked really well was the Basque import from the Huyar Foundation, which not only imported a lot of forms for each lexeme, but also imported senses as well. So that's like the single largest good import that I can think of, where a good import just means it has senses.
All right, we have another question from Susanna, who is directed at Sadik, I think. What will it mean for Dagbani? No, it's Dagbani at all, but I mean, as we have Sadik here, maybe you can answer this, to be one of the pioneering languages with abstract Wikipedia. That's a very good question.
Hello. Yeah. So for me, I think it's a great opportunity for the Dagbani Wikipedia to be part of this project, because as a new language that has just come from the incubator and having the opportunity to participate in this, it means like we'll be able to learn from what other established communities have done or are doing with regards to abstract Wikipedia. So we joined and we started like creating lexemes. Even though we haven't done much, but I think there's an opportunity for us to leverage the experience of the well-established communities who are also participating in this project to also grow. It means that Dagbani can also now have more content. I remember when we were selected, there was a need for us to, identify or look for a language corpus, digital language corpus, which was a little bit challenging because we could not find anything like that on the internet. So gradually, the Dagbani Wikipedia is going to grow. And as I mentioned earlier, Wikidata or any other projects under Wikidata are going to help the Dagbani and to be more visible on the internet. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity for us as a language community to be part of this project.
Yeah, that sounds very inspiring. I also have a follow-up question, Sadik, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I expect there are like new people that are starting up writing Wikipedia, editing the Wikimedia projects, like due to your activities. And what kind of like feedback do you get from people who are like first introduced in like the world of Wikidata or like seeing Dagbani in an environment like this?
Yeah, so for our community, we started with a totally new community. Most of the current contributors to Dagbani are people who have just started editing Wikipedia in general, like just last year, 2020. So when you look at the entire community, they are very new. It's not like they were already editing other wikis and then we started the Dagbani. There's only a few of us, like myself and Mohammed and Rashid, but majority of the community members are totally new to Wikipedia in general. So when we introduced Wikidata, it was the same feeling, like they feel it's a new thing, but now gradually everybody is picking up and they are learning to contribute more on Wikidata, and some of them have already started adding lexemes and Dagbani. So yeah.
Cool. There has been a lot of comments in the chat, I think, but not so many questions. There's one more for Susanna. Then maybe I can squeeze in one for Mahir. I've seen two of your talks now, one at I think the Arctic Knot and one here. And you always speak like such passion about abstract Wikipedia and wiki functions. And I wondered, do you remember like the first time you heard about this project coming? And do you remember what you were thinking, like your first thought when you were learning about abstract Wikipedia being in the pipeline?
I guess when I first heard about it, I don't remember when that would have been. I was also sort of skeptical at first, but not necessarily because of this was also, I think, around a time where I wasn't nearly as active in lexicographical data editing as I am now. There was a skepticism on my part just because the description of how this would work was incredibly hand-wavy. And even as late as Arctic Knot, it was still kind of hand-wavy. Actually, not even Arctic Knot, even as late as Wikimania, that description was kind of hand-wavy. And it was this dissatisfaction about the lack of detail on this point and the very large timeline that was provided that was that I think that was kind of inordinate, that drove me to develop this and be so active in seeing, okay, we need this infrastructure in terms of properties and things to make this work. So I would say, yeah, it sort of evolved from an initial kind of skepticism to a thorough idea that, yes, this is possible, but we need to talk about it in very different and actual tangible terms first. And this is the culmination of that, I think, my presentation.
I wonder if we learn from this that we need to leave things as vague as possible so people like kind of step up and want to be involved with them and discuss about them. I think we lost Sadik, but maybe he's going to come back. Hopefully he's going to come back. So there is another question in the chat that I want to read to you. It's from Susanna, and she's wondering about toponyms. I hope that's how to say it in English. Maybe. And she's doing Sami toponyms now in lexicographical data together with Wikimedia Norway. And she wonders if this is there's so many comments in the chat, I need to scroll up. And she wonders if this is an accepted practice and if they can continue and expand. Any opinions on this?
Yeah, I think Nikki's answer is correct. Yeah, toponyms are generally fine. There are some, I'd like to admit that there are some exceptions, at least in my view, but to go into them is probably another 5 minutes in itself. Same with ethnonyms as well, although again, there are exceptions I might want to admit. I would encourage you, the toponym, I imagine the toponyms have some sort of history in themselves, like place names have an origin at the very least. And so if information can be added about their origin, the words that they are composed of, that would be a useful thing to add in addition. I don't think the toponyms themselves will necessarily make the language, if you know what I mean. But sure, go ahead and add them. It'll be a useful addition for sure.
I'm hoping glad to hear that, Susanna. I have one more question on my paper after following Alicia through her workflow with lexemes. And also after you saying there's some frustration when working with lexemes and like working with the UI, still you're returning and you're adding lexemes. So what makes you so excited about this part of Wikidata that makes you return to it, like wanting to add more and more?
My mental illness, I assume. But I had been an active editor in Wiktionary for many years. And some of my frustrations with Wiktionary, like the fact that it's not really well structured, you have to guess which templates to use and where to put them. And then all this work has to be repeated in all the other language versions of Wiktionary. I guess Wikidata solves that part. Yeah, I like words, I guess. And it is very relaxing to just look at texts and see what lexemes are missing.
I guess liking words is a big plus when doing this.
Yeah, also, honestly, like for many years ago, when I was so frustrated with all the Wiktionaries, I was kind of planning to make my own platform for structured lexicographical data. And now I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, saves you some work. Good. We have 5 more minutes on the clock. There are no questions in the chat that I have seen. If I overlooked them, please make me aware of it. I have one kind of closing question that I would like to ask all of you, and maybe also people in the chat who I think are just as experienced and knowledgeable. So in a world where all of the 7,000 languages or more that are around in the world have a minimum of 15,000 lexemes in Wikidata, what kind of world, what would that world look like, and how would it be different from now?
Well, 15,000, that's really not a lot. But I think this is the sort of critical mass that will make more people want to actually get involved. Because right now, for many languages, you just come and look. There are no standards that you can look at. There is no best practice that you can learn from. And that is kind of a problem if you just start from scratch on a new language. But when you have these a couple thousand, 15,000 lexemes, then you probably have a community, people who can help each other, and you have standards, and you know what to do. You don't have to invent things on your own.
The other three, do you want to share your vision, what that world would look like and how it would be different from the world we have now?
Yeah, I can share something about that. Well, our research unit in Tunisia has worked on a project about using to generate semantic similarity measures. And what we found out, despite the lack of structure in Wiktionary, the glosses were very good in generating semantic similarity with a huge accuracy when comparing it to, for example, WordNet at the time. And I think that participatory projects, and particularly the lexicographical data, can bring natural language generation to the next step. I think that we can have with that a proper machine translation platform that can be trustworthy, that is transparent. We can have plenty of applications. We can have information retrieval from scratch. We can have machines that think and process. So we can have plenty of things. I think that this will bring to natural language processing, machine learning to the next step.
That's the dream. Thank you for sharing. Do you have anything to add, Mahir or Sadik?
I guess I also have to agree with what Houcemeddine said. One thing I did want to note is that languages are going to be very diverse, and what I've noticed for some people who come to contribute is that when they see the examples of other well-developed languages, the propensity for them is to just outright imitate them. Some people were trying to add verbs with exactly the same structure as the English verbs, despite the fact that they didn't work that way in that language. So there's a loss of information if you say, okay, here's what English does, or here's what Swedish does. See if you can make this work. And people will just copy it outright. There is a usefulness to being able to invent a convention for things. And at some point, once it becomes clear that that convention works really well, that's when you can go by and say that this is worth documenting. At least that's how it worked for Bengali. I'm sure that's how it worked for a number of other languages as well. But in terms of planning, it doesn't have to be that everything has to be documented first. It's sort of like on Wikidata, for better or for worse. You see a lot of exemplars modeled the same way by different people, and you take that to be a sort of norm. I think for languages, maintaining that norm or that trend of languages possibly going their own way in a lot of different places will lead to a lot better diversity or a lot more robust systems for natural language generation, natural language processing, because they won't have the biases of any specific language in terms of the exemplars that are being used.
Thank you. Sadik, you have the closing words for this discussion round.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I do agree with all of them, and I think lexicographical data has come to stay and is already helping a lot of people like us. Just within the last few months, when we started creating lexemes, I've been able to understand how some of these words intersect and how natural language processing, this can be useful to natural language processing. I also agree that lexicographical data would help, or abstract Wikipedia would help some of these languages to grow on the internet, and how people can, make use of information that are available, especially for a language like Dagbani. We haven't done much, but I already see that the future is great. The only challenge I see with the Dagbani language is when we try to create forms. For example, there are terms that would need to combine a word or two to be able to get the Dagbani version of it. For example, verb is a single word, but if you want to write it in Dagbani, you need to combine two words to be able to describe verb in Dagbani. So it's it's an interesting project, and I look forward to the success of the project in all the other selected languages.
Thank you all for sharing. I like the sentence, lexicographical data has come to stay. That's maybe a nice way of summarizing this language track that was not just about lexicographical data, but a big part of it was. Thank you all for coming to the discussion. Thank you all for like the also very participatory chat that added a lot of comments, asked a lot of questions. I hope someone is copying the chat to the Etherpad, so this is not getting lost. And I hope, yes, and I hope that we have some more exciting, awesome sessions coming up. It's getting a little dark here in Berlin slowly. And with this, I'm going to say thank you and bye, everyone.